Happy Sunday morning to you all. Hope everything's going well in your world. Hiking today with Liz above Leavenworth, Washington. Late morning. It's going to be 70 degrees Fahrenheit today. And want to point out a little bit of geology before I resume hiking with Elizabeth. Thinking about Aaron Donaghy this morning, thinking about Jerome Lessman this morning. Let's start with Jerome Lessman, since I was with him earlier this week and talked about him on Friday as well. We're looking south right now. That's Leavenworth, Washington, looking south. Coming out of the high country was the Icicle Creek Glacier, an Alpine Glacier. Can you visualize it? Coming right down this draw, that's Icicle Creek itself, the Icicle Creek Canyon, and flowing right out towards us is a cute little alpine glacier. Multiple times during the ice age, this Icicle Creek Glacier flowed out of the narrow canyon and filled this little basin where Leavenworth, Washington is today. What's the evidence for that? This is Stephen Porter again, University of Washington, back in the late 1960s. I don't know if you're able to pick up with us looking right into the sun, but there are some linear features in those trees. Those are not terraces, those are moraines. Lateral moraines of this Icicle Creek Alpine Glacier. And I think maybe I can see some of those moraines through the trees here as well, but I'm less confident of that. But Steve Porter found those moraines. Maybe he didn't find them, but he continued work on those moraines. I think a geologist by the name of Page. Now, I haven't done my homework, but I think somebody back in the 30s found them as well. But the reason I'm thinking about Jerome Lessman this morning is because Jerome says, okay, so you've got a healthy alpine glacier coming into this area, sitting on top of Leavenworth. When you eventually melt that ice, where's the water going to go? It's going to go down the Wenatchee River Valley. So now you're looking east, down the Wenatchee River Valley, and you'll eventually go about 30 miles until you hit downtown Wenatchee and you merge with the Columbia River. So new thoughts from Jerome's visit is, yeah, you got a glacier, that's fine, but that's not the end of the story. What are you going to do with all that meltwater? And are you going to drain the meltwater gradually? You know, is it going to be like a well-behaved kind of gradual garden hose leaving the valley as the ice melts and retreats back? Or is it more likely that you'll have some rather substantial lakes that then suddenly release? And if you have sudden release of that pent-up water, are those colossal floods? Are there medium-sized floods? New thoughts for me. Maybe not for you, but new thoughts for me. Now, Liz is up ahead of me, and we're walking on these trails that are mostly, looks like mountain biking paradise, but we're on 2 feet. I was up here a year ago with my Geology 351 students. You might remember a couple of videos from that. But I'm also thinking of Aaron Donaghy this morning, because she's been publishing on the Chumstick Formation. And these sandstones and shales and conglomerates are collectively called the Chumstick Formation, and we're talking about the Eocene now. And since I've had all those programs this past winter on the Eocene, I'm now remembering some of those concepts that we had. Most impressive from here is the break in slope as we get out of the high country, which is the Mount Stewart granodiorite, the Mount Stewart Pluton, 96 to 91 million years old. But if you break the topography and you suddenly are down in this more modest scene, you cross the Leavenworth Fault. So the Leavenworth Fault comes right through here, and the Leavenworth Fault is one of the two fault bounding bases. The Chumstick Basin has a major strike-slip fault on both sides. Do you remember that story? Antioch Fault on one side, Leavenworth Fault on the other. And even though those two strike-slip faults have been inactive for more than 40 million years, there's still a topographic reflection or topographic change from the hard crystalline core of the Stuart batholith to the softer sedimentary rocks. So you're like, well, why would you have any hint of a topographic change if there hasn't been any geologic action in 40 million years? And I think the answer is it's just easier to erode sandstone than it is hard granite and serpentinite. And so it doesn't matter if you've had strike-slip fault earthquakes on the Leavenworth Fault recently, you're still going to have erosional differences. Let's keep it rolling. I don't want you in trouble here, but now, I think it's safe to say that Erin Donaghy is not the first geologist to study the Chumstick. Far from it. But from my point of view, she's the first, along with her collaboration with Michael Eddy and Paul Umhofer, to have very precise dates on marker beds within the Chumstick. And for the first time, we realize how quickly the sediment in the Chumstick Formation has been accumulating. The crazy Eocene. I don't think heavy breathing. Woo, baby. There's a workout today. Oh yeah, I remember this spot. So I don't mean this to be a rehash, but you do remember from this past winter work with geologists to find these impressive tuff beds that are within the Chumstick Formation, and new dates from the Mike Eddy lab to get some very precise dates on those tuff beds, and therefore a much more accurate way of keeping track of time and realizing that this is a much more dramatic, dynamic, and even explosive time, the Eocene. Why do I say explosive? Well, in the very last session, session Z, where I had all three of the geologists on screen with me at once. Do you remember that? Bob Miller, Stacia Gordon, Mike Eddy. Mike thinks he has a case for a volcanic center up in the North Cascades, notably the Golden Horn Pluton. He thinks he has one of the major tuff beds in the Chumstick here, matching basically the magma chamber of that volcanic system. And if he continues along those lines, that'll be very fun to make some specific geologic ties between regions that are usually not thought of as connected, at least not for me. Like you've got a layer of volcanic ash here that's a direct result of an eruption, maybe a supervolcano eruption, in what is now the North Cascades, up by Washington Pass on Washington State Route 20. So to me, the Leavenworth area is interesting for Ice Age geology. Not major Ice Age floods coming through here now. Nobody's saying that. And nobody's saying the Canadian ice sheet was here. But if you look carefully in this basin, you find ice bringing granites from the Stewart Range and carrying those granites and placing those granite boulders down here. Multiple advances and retreats of the Icicle Valley Glacier. This is public land. I'll share the GPS location for the parking lot down here at the base of the ski hill. It's a pretty low-key spot. I kind of get the impression it's a spot used mostly by locals. I've never been here where it's been super crowded. Granted, I've only been here a handful of times, but okay. I see a family member. Let's test the zoom on this. Whoa. Yeah, peanut butter and jelly. Oh, she's reaching for the bugles. Just kidding. She doesn't have the Midwestern diet that I do. Much healthier than I am. These Chumstick sandstones are impressive and steeply dipping. Multiple generations of folding. I think Ralph Hagerud, who now lives in Wenatchee, is continuing to think and map about folding events within the Squawk Formation, which is older, but also folding within the Chumstick. Boy, I'm really bouncing around, aren't I, this summer? Different time frames. At some point later this summer, I'm going to have to start focusing a little bit more on Baja, BC. Oh boy, better turn the camera off. You don't want to hear the heavy breathing here. Well, what do you think? Oh, you think so? Well, that's all virgin ground for me. I've never continued, but if you see a path, great. I'll just get a shot here quick and then we'll go. We've already got some haze. I see a couple of, I hope they're just campfires, but okay, it's late May. We are actively appreciating clear blue skies, fresh air. You live in the American West, you know what I'm thinking. How many more weeks are we going to have clear air before the fire season begins? That's the reality of it, it seems, lately. So like, it's extra motivation to get out here now as much as possible, because we know that we just can't count on these beautiful blue skies that we've, hello, that most of us have taken for granted. All trails. Well, you're not kidding around. You mean it. You know there's a loop.
Not even seasonal.
I'm so lucky.
What got me was when there'd be a wall,
Yeah.
and then a drop off.
Yeah.
So don't like that.
Right. Yeah, I do remember those.
And then a bunch of rocks.
I don't tend to think that way, but yeah. As long as you just slip your mind there just a little bit, you're like, okay, that would not be good.
Exactly. I was terrified in those situations.
Arrowleaf balsam root, lupin, drumstick sandstone. What more could you ask for? Okay, down the green?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi.
Have us a beer water.
Yep. Thank you. I love you, and goodbye.